Are you looking for something a little different than average blueberry pancakes? Well, I've got the perfect solution for you here. These are my light blueberry cornmeal pancakes. They come together really quickly and they're so good. And I'll even be having a little helper in the video this time.
Hi.
Hopefully not acting like that. But if you want to see how these are done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy.
Oh, my name's Bryan.
I was wondering who you were. I'm a home cook, an amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is one of mine, and I'm going to show our grandson Bryan how I'm making blueberry cornmeal pancakes. And they might be like a little higher than I would normally do for breakfast, but usually on the weekends I kind of give myself a little more leeway, and still the bites and points calories aren't going to be too bad. So I think that you'll enjoy them, and you better enjoy them. So the first thing we'll do is go over the ingredients. I have here my cooking spray. I'm going to be using a griddle for these, but you could do it in a skillet. You would just have to do it in batches, whereas I can just do all 6 at one time. And if you did do it in a skillet and you needed to keep them warm, I usually just turn on the oven to like 180, then turn it off once it's heated and just store them in there so that way they stay warm when you're making the rest of the pancakes. That way the first ones don't get cold. So remember that when you get older and you have to make breakfast for a big crowd of people. Are you laughing because you're not going to make breakfast for a big crowd of people?
I'm just not going to cook anything at all.
Wow. Here I have 3/4 cup of almond milk, and that is at room temperature. All of these ingredients are at room temperature. I took them out last night before I went to bed and covered them so nothing got into them in case any bugs were flying around. Here I have 2/3 cup of cornmeal, and it's not going to be gritty. These pancakes aren't going to get gritty because it's like not like flour where it's really soft. It's kind of like little sand bits, but these pancakes aren't going to be gritty, and I will show you a little trick on how to make that happen. I guess I'll show it to you too. Here I have 1/2 cup of flour, and the flour is in there to help us get a little more softness. If you just use cornmeal, these would be very dense. You don't want that. Here I have a heaping 1/3 cup of blueberries, and you can honestly do as much or as little as you want. I'm going to be putting about a tablespoon of blueberries onto each of the pancakes. So if you just have a rounded 1/3 cup of blueberries, you'll have plenty. Here I have 1 egg, and of course that's at room temperature, as is 2 tablespoons of applesauce and 2 tablespoons of non-fat Greek yogurt. And that's going to help us to make buttermilk when mixing it with the almond milk. And if you ever need buttermilk for a recipe, what you can do is just take for every cup of milk that you need, remove 2 tablespoons of the milk and put in 2 tablespoons of non-fat Greek yogurt. Mix those together and you have a pretty quick and easy low-calorie buttermilk. Here I have 1 tablespoon of sugar replacement, and that's just to give us a little bit of sweetness to these. You don't want them overly sweet because you are going to be adding syrup. I assume you're going to add syrup, right?
Yeah.
Here I have 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And the reason that we're using baking powder and baking soda, and I've mentioned this in a few other videos, when you have something acidic like the non-fat Greek yogurt that's going to make our buttermilk, the baking soda is going to act kind of like, you know, when you're in school and your friends want to do something sneaky and somebody has to distract the teacher.
Yeah.
That's what the baking soda is going to do. So while the baking powder is helping to give us some lift, the baking soda is going to be playing around with the acid saying, look, over here, nothing to see here. Let that baking powder do its job because I'm going to be in your face distracting you, kind of like you do.
I love doing that.
I know, I figured you would. Okay, so those are all of the ingredients. I'm going to shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is make our buttermilk. So if you take that Greek yogurt, put it right in here. I'll help scrape out the bowl because it's not all gonna wanna come out. We're just gonna whisk that together. And if you are whisking something in just like a little container like this and you really can't whisk well, what you do is just rub it between your hands.
That's cool.
And that's whisking all of that stuff in there. So now we have our buttermilk. What we're gonna do is take out 1/4 cup of this, and I'll just put it back in the bowl that the Greek yogurt was in. And we need to save that right over here. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the buttermilk, add it into the cornmeal. That's your job.
Yay.
See this little spout?
Yeah.
You might wanna use that. And here I'll scrape out anything that's in there. And then we're gonna add in the applesauce. And now we're just going to whisk this together. You might have some clumping from the cornmeal on the top getting wet, but you just whisk it a little bit and it'll incorporate in there just fine.
Could I?
Could you whisk it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna try that method you showed us. Is it working?
Yeah, see, it's all blended together. If it was like really full, you probably wouldn't want to do that because it might splash, but this isn't that full. All right, so now guess what we have to do with this?
What?
Microwave it.
Ah!
Do you know why we're gonna microwave it?
Why?
Because it's gonna cook it a little bit. It's gonna heat up the applesauce and the almond milk, and it's going to plump up the cornmeal. That's what the secret for making these not gritty is to cook it and plump up that cornmeal a little bit. So I have a little cover. You want to do this covered. We're going to do it for 30 seconds. Then I'm going to stir it and do it for another 30 seconds. And I'll show you what the difference is once we get to that point. All right, you want to do a snap?
Yeah.
All right, he's going to snap and we'll magically get some cornmeal cooked. And there we have it. You can see that the cornmeal is now more hydrated. It's not going to be solid. You don't want it to get solid. You want it to still be liquid, but you just want it to plump up a little bit and not be as liquid. So now what we have to do is cover it, and we're going to let this sit here for 5 minutes. And while we're doing that, we're gonna mix together our flour ingredients. All right, so now we're gonna mix together our flour with our sweetener, our leaveners, and our salt. So we're gonna start with the flour, throw that in that bowl, just dump it in. There's sugar replacement, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. Then you can just whisk that together. This one you can't do this method because it won't really do much because there's not a lot of flour in here to do that. But you just wanna get it so that you don't have bits of salt or the leaveners, because if you have little pockets of the baking soda, it might make like this side swell up really big and then this side's gonna be really flat. So you wanna make sure it's evenly mixed in there. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our buttermilk, the 1/4 cup of the buttermilk that we made, and put that in there. So the buttermilk and the egg. Okay, and then we're just gonna mix these two together. So I'm gonna break up that yolk a little bit and just whisk that gently, because see how it's starting to kind of splash up against the sides. And doing this, you can, but because it's not, like the measuring cup was really thin, it's not gonna work as well with this, but that's all you need, just so that, see how it's all one color now. All right, so now we just have to wait until our 5 minutes for the cornmeal is up, and we'll move on. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes. I'm gonna take the cover off of the cornmeal, and then what we're going to do, I will let you do the honors. We're gonna pour our buttermilk and egg into the cornmeal, and then just whisk that together, being careful not to push it out of the bowl. Okay, so now that that's combined, we're going to bring in the flour. Now we're gonna pour this into the flour. You wanna get all of that out of the bowl to make sure these are properly hydrated. and have all that corny flavor in there. And then we're going to whisk the flour into our mixture here. Now, usually I would just use a spatula mixing in flour and the wet stuff. Do you know why?
Why?
Because if you whisk, sometimes you can whisk it too much and you can make flour feel more like bread than like a pancake, which you want to be light and fluffy. But because we have so much cornmeal in here, we have a little bit of a buffer so that we're not going to develop much gluten just by mixing it a little bit with the whisk. But that's all there is to that. But guess what we get to do now?
What?
Wait again. You have to let this sit for about 8 to 10 minutes. Anytime you make a pancake batter, you should always let it sit once you've combined it. So that way, if any gluten did build up, it kind of relaxes a little bit and you don't have a problem. It also lets flour that may not be absorbing much liquid absorb some while it's doing its sitting. So 8 to 10 minutes and we'll be back. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes. We've let our pancake batter sit. I'm going to spray my griddle. And I don't want to spray it too soon because sometimes it can get a little brown if you spray it too early. Now I have, it's almost a 1/4 cup scoop. I usually do like a little under 1/4 cup for each one. And then that way, if we need to, if we have extra, we can just spread it out. And I have my blueberries and a tablespoon. I'm going to do about a tablespoon on each pancake, but you don't have to measure it. I just do that for the calories and nutrition facts. But we're just going to take a scoop and add that to the pan. You're going to want to do one of these?
No.
You're not? Why? Because it's too hot?
Yeah, and that's a metal scoop.
It's a cool metal scoop, you weirdo.
Well, if you touch the pan, it will be very cool.
Yeah, well, it's not like an electric shock. And see, we have some batter left, so we're just going to take a little bit and add it to each of these pancakes. Okay, so get that out of our way. And now, before they set too much, we're going to add our blueberries and just sprinkle those all over. All right, so now that we have all our blueberries, we're gonna let this sit for about 2 to 3 minutes till they puff up a little bit and they'll get a little dry around the edges, and then we'll flip them. All right, so it's been about 2 minutes or so. Gonna flip it. That looks good. That is the color that you want to see when you flip them. And now they're gonna sit on this side for just about another minute or two, just for that side to get cooked and for those blueberries to get set into our pancakes. And then we're done and ready for breakfast. Are you ready for breakfast? I know Grandpa Paul is, so give us a couple of minutes and we'll show you what they look like. All right, so we've just checked good color on those, so I'm going to turn this off and we are going to put them on our plate and get those ready to serve. Okay, and that's all there is to it. Our blueberry cornmeal pancakes. So was that pretty easy?
Yeah.
You're going to make these for your parents?
Maybe.
You're lying. Anyway, that's all there is to it. These are going to be delicious for breakfast. But before we get to breakfast, I have to give you those nutrition facts. Now, this makes 6 pancakes, and I did it individually for individual pancakes in case you want 1, 2, or 3. Paul and I typically have 3, but because why are you so far away? But because we have our friend here, we're gonna have 2 each. Now each pancake is gonna be 2 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue Points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, which is close to their current plan, so those are the bites and points that I give. Now, if you have 2 of these, it's going to be 5 bites or points. And if you have 3, like I typically do, it'll be 7. But I'm willing to do that on a weekend, have a little splurge, and I'm using sugar-free syrup, so what's the harm? And if you were following calories, the calories for one pancake would be 120. And if you were following macros, the fat would be 1.5 grams. The saturated fat would be 0.3 grams. The protein would be 4 grams. Carbs would be 25 grams. Fiber would be 1.2 grams. And sugars would be 1.6 grams for one pancake. Again, if you did 2 or 3, the bites and points shift a little bit with that wonky, healthy WW math. But for calories, each one, if you had 3, it would be 360 since there's 120 calories each. But not too bad for a delicious, fluffy cornmeal blueberry pancake. But I hope that you enjoyed this video and this recipe. And if you did, I'd appreciate you doing the usual. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. Also, comment down below if you've ever had cornmeal pancakes before. Have you?
No.
Well, you're in for a treat. But if you comment down below, let me know if you've ever tried them, and then let me know if you try these, what you think. They're not going to be gritty like you're afraid they might be, so give them a try. And the recipe for these will be linked directly down in the description box, as well as a link to the blog itself. If you're looking for any of my recipes, it'll be linked down there. Also down there is my Amazon storefront, my Built Bar rewards, Fetch rewards, my recipes with Roy's store is linked down there, and my social media. I have my Instagram and 3 Facebook groups that I'm part of. He's not part of any of them. But check out that description box for all sorts of information. So I think Grandpa Paul is probably ready for breakfast. So I think we'd better get going, and I hope you'll be enjoying some of these yourself very soon. So until next time, bye. Ah!
Are you cutting this part out?
Now I'm putting that part in because you are scary. Dun, 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 dun. I'm going to tell him to stay till the end to see the bloopers and have you dancing like that at the end.